Welcome in, guys. Here we are. It's episode 3 of World Class Retrospective. It is February 6th, 1982. We're getting close to Valentine's Day. Won't you be my Valentine? Join me as we take a look at this week's episode of World Class Television. All right, guys, before we get into this week's episode, I do again want to mention below, right down here underneath the TV, you'll find our Twitter/X handle. Again, we are at World Class Retro. Head over there if you haven't already. Drop us a follow. We'll be interacting on there as much as we can, sharing cool stuff, and hopefully talking to some of you guys as well while we're not on YouTube. So those kind of in-between times. Again, as I mentioned in a post here on YouTube, I'm going to try to stick to this as weekly as possible. Of course, life happens. I have a very little one at home. We travel a lot. I have a life. So, unfortunately, I can't completely promise you things will be coming out every Friday, but damn it, I'm going to aim for that. So, keep an eye out on YouTube. Check us out on Twitter/X, whatever you call it. And we'll see you there. Otherwise, specifically for this episode and kind of episodes moving forward, I did want to note to you guys something unfortunate but important. So essentially, you'll notice last week's episode was dated January 9th, 1982. We are now here February 6th, 1982, almost a month in between, and there's nothing. So at this time, it's territory days. TV is expensive. Syndicated TV, let alone national TV, right? So we're on the syndication level right now. World Class is on channel, I believe it's 39 in Dallas at this time, Dallas-Fort Worth. So essentially what World Class would do to cut costs for their television, from my understanding, and this is kind of hearsay and just based on some research that I've done on the internet, it seems as if the Fort Worth tapings, so when World Class would go to Reunion Arena specifically, they would film their shows, release it those same weeks, and there you go. That's the episode of Fort Worth TV. They might film 2, 3 episodes back to back in Reunion Arena at a show. Well, unfortunately, what World Class would then do is once those episodes would air, they would then take that same tape and tape over it for the Sportatorium episodes. So Fort Worth would happen, then they'd tape over, Dallas shows would happen, and the cycle would then continue like that. Again, it saves you on buying all these tapes. It saves you on storage of storing all these tapes, different episodes every single week. Sometimes multiple things going on as far as taping. So that's what I understand kind of happens even here, right? We've missed a month of TV, hypothetically. That's what I'm guessing happened. There was a couple Fort Worth episodes in between last week and this week that unfortunately have been either lost to time, taped over, or WWE is hoarding that footage and just has never, ever released it for some reason. Third one, I kind of doubt. But I've searched online, I've searched high and low for Fort Worth stuff, and it's, from my experience as somebody who really enjoys world-class television, it's pretty much impossible to get your hands on. I mean, there's a couple clips here on YouTube of maybe a match or two for an episode or two in Fort Worth, but even the super shows. Later this year in August, there will be a Star Wars special extravaganza, and you can only find half of that show And that's because half of that show was presented on world-class television for a couple weeks. So just really weird. Again, that we're talking almost 50 years ago. Not nearly the landscape of television production as we are now. So kind of keep that in mind moving forward. Yes, it sucks. No, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it. All right? Now, with all that cleared up, there is some good news about this episode. The last two have been plagued with production issues, as reported by Peacock. This is the first episode of our series that apparently is not plagued by such production issues for the original tape. So no extra notes here. We just get right into the taping. So there you go. It's like we're starting over. We got a clean slate. Yeah, we might have missed a couple weeks of TV. You know, a couple dozen matches. Who cares? Right? World Class Championship Wrestling doesn't care. We don't care. We're on to the next thing. It's almost Valentine's Day. It's 1982. Let's have some fun. Let me give you a quick, brief cap of what we can expect from this show. On this edition of World Class Championship Wrestling, Bugsy McGraw puts the WCCW American Heavyweight Championship on the line in a match against Madril. Plus, we have Big Daddy Bundy facing a handicap challenge in the main event. And Gene Goodson also happens to interview Kevin and Kerry von Erich, and much, much more. So, there you go. Let's get to the actual card for the week, shall we? We have another five lovely matches this week, running them down in order. First up, we have Wild Bill Irwin versus Richard Blood. Carlos Zapata versus the legendary Jose Lothario. Third up, we have Bugsy McGraw versus Al Madril. One of my favorite guys, Al Madril. We'll talk about him. Fourth, we have Kerry von Erich versus Larry Higgins. And for the main event, you have your Big Daddy Bundy handicap challenge, and he takes on El Negro Assassin and Tony Torres. So, there you go. 5 matches. We've run down the card. We've done a brief synopsis of said card, whatever you want to call it. Why delay the fun any further? Let's get into the breakdown. First up, of course, our very good friend Gene Goodson opens our show, and he is joined tonight on commentary. Yes, another special guest commentator. Tonight it will be Arman Hussein, the evil bad guy from Sudan, Arman Hussein. Arman spoke a bit about the American Heavyweight title defense coming up later, stating that McGraw could hold his own and defend his crown, but the challenger was a worthy one. He gave the champ the edge, though. Gene finished running down the card, and we got into our first match. Now, as a heads up for this week, guys, we don't have a lot of interview footage to pass along to you, so instead, I figured I'd kind of break the rules a little bit and give you this opening video here. It's not technically an interview with Arman Hussein, but he does speak a little bit more than what I've written up here on Wrestling Recaps, which, by the way, if you haven't gone over there yet, what are you doing? Go over there, check it out. You need a wrestling review? You need to know what happened on an episode of World Class Championship Wrestling Television? Go over there. He's got it all. He's got everything. I digress. Let's head into this opening monologue here with Gene Goodson, who is, again, standing by with Arman Hussein. Gene, it's all yours.
Welcome to World Class Wrestling, another exciting evening of professional wrestling. Also on tap tonight, we've got an American Heavyweight Championship match. We'll tell you more about that in just a minute. It's going to be exciting. But right now, doing the color commentary for me is the African Heavyweight Champion, speaker of 5 languages, educated in London from the Sudan, North Africa. Here is the Honorable Arman Hussein.
Well, thank you. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. But getting back to the championship match in which we're going to watch here this evening, I want to say also that the incumbent champion, which is Mr. McGraw, is a very tough and rough type individual type wrestler. He can hold his own. He has all of the credentials that he needs to come in here and to defend his crown. However, Madril, I've wrestled him many times, is another competitor, and he too is a very strong wrestler, and he has all of the credentials that it takes to become the champion wrestler of the United States once again. It should be his first one or whatever. But however, it's an even match, and I would hesitate to say, but I would give McGraw the edge. I would say that he would remain the champion.
The current champion, Bugsy McGraw, getting the edge according to Arman Hussein in the match.
Well, what'd I tell you, right? Nothing earth-shattering, not really an interview per se. I pretty much recapped it the best I could, and you didn't get anything too much extra. But again, maybe for those watching who don't even know what Arman Hussein looks like, that was a good chance to get a up-close and personal visual, because Arman Hussein will be a very key player on world-class television for the pretty much entirety of 1982. So there you go. You're welcome. Let's head into the first match, shall we? We have Wild Bill Irwin versus Richard Blood. Irwin and Blood were set to square off in a singles match here with a 10-minute time limit. Blood got a solid reaction when he leveled his former manager, who was at ringside, Captain Frank Dusick. Thumbs down to him. And that was at the bell as the bell rang. Irwin jumped him and took over quick. Gene reminds us on commentary that next week, the Great Kabuki will take on spoiler number 1, who is apparently a former client of Gary Hart, who is Kabuki's current manager. So there you go. That's kind of a big announcement. We got a Kabuki singles match next week to look forward to in the middle of this opening contest that gets announced. So cool. Irwin continued to take the fight to Blood, with him getting very little offense in. Dusick, who was still standing ringside, distracted Blood for Bill Irwin to nail him with a running knee to the back. Irwin followed it up with a falling splash from the second rope for a 3 count over Richard Blood. My thoughts on the match? Again, Irwin gets a good showing here. A solid full-star squash match for him, I would say. And that was squash match, not squatch match. Although Wild Bill Irwin's hair is pretty out of control. As I've stated a couple times on the podcast now, I am a Wild Bill Irwin fan. If there's one wrestler spotlight that I need to nail down and hopefully track down for an interview, which would be awesome. So if you have the hookups, let me know. But it would be Wild Bill Irwin. I would love to kind of pick his brain about this time specifically in his career, because again, I'm a fan. He's not flashy. He's straightforward. He's got more of a brawling style. He doesn't do flashy moves, but it just works. Like it's a territory heel that you want. It's exactly what you want. So there you go. For his squash match here, he gets a full star. A nice spotlight for my friend, Wild Bill Irwin. Going into pretty much our first and last interview to present to you here this week, Gene Goodson is standing by with none other than the world-famous Von Erich boys, and that's Kerry and Kevin Von Erich. I won't spoil too much. I'll let you guys do the viewing. Gene, take it away.
We have with us the greatest name in professional wrestling today, the Von Erichs, have been for years. Second generation coming. Here's the one and only Kevin Von Erich. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing just fine, Gene. It sure is good to be here. We're really looking forward to letting the fans know that whenever we come to your town, we're going to be giving it 100%, and we're going to be coming at our opponents strictly to win, and winning something our dad instilled in us a long time ago, and we do it as fairly as we can, but number one goal is to win.
Tell us a little bit about Kevin. What do you like to do? What are some of your hobbies, etc.?
Well, for about 4 years now, I've been getting into some cliff diving. Went cliff diving out in Acapulco a couple of weeks ago, and did pretty good in the standings, and that's about it. I just sit around a lot, tell a few jokes.
I'm not going to argue with him. Kevin Von Erich, thank you, Kevin. And his brother on my right is Kerry Von Erich. Kerry, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Gene. Gene, like Kev said, we are looking forward to coming to your town. And they're talking about hobbies or things we like to do. And, I mostly like to write. I like to write poems. I like to ride horses. I like to fish. And Kevin and I have just gotten into a little bit of skydiving. We've been doing that for about 2 months now. And it's been relaxing our heads a little bit. And pretty soon we're going to take a pencil and a pad up there and jump out of that plane and write exactly how we feel, while we're falling, and then pull our chutes for you. Good done.
I don't know. Here are two of the greatest draws in professional wrestling, and I don't know if I'd let them skydive if I managed them, but who's going to say they can't, right? Anyway, the one and only Von Erich boys. It's good to have you. It's good to have you as part of world-class wrestling.
Unfortunately, these Von Erich boys, these young, hungry Von Erich boys, need some more polishing on the microphone. To me, it always just seems like they're caught off guard. Like somebody tells them, hey guys, we need an interview right now for this week's television. Get in there and just talk about something, and hopefully Gene will line up a few softballs for you to hit out of the park. I don't know. It seems to me as if they have no idea what's going on or what they're going to talk about prior to the red light on the camera turning on. So I think we got a little bit more of that this week. I would say Kevin was a little bit weaker than he has been on the last couple episodes where he's doing most of the talking for the team. But again, it's just really lackluster, and I wish they would stop interviewing these two every single week, because you can poke rocket-sized holes in their microphone performance, in my opinion. And that's coming from a Von Erich guy. All right, check the shirt out. House of the Von Erichs. I think I can be critical because I think it's a fair criticism. And I bet you if you were to ask Kevin right now what he thought of his own microphone skills, he'd probably tell you the same because he's a stand-up guy. So there you go. Again, another little promo here as far as self-promotion for the Von Erichs, as if they needed it. There you go. There's just not much more I can say. It's not great, unfortunately. So let's go into the second match of the evening, shall we? It was Carlos Zapata versus Jose Lothario, and it was a singles match scheduled for 10 minutes. Hussein and Gene put Lothario over on commentary, which I found surprising for a heel to be doing. So it seems like throughout the show here, Arman is staying somewhat unbiased, which I kind of feel like defeats the purpose of him being on commentary. You really want him kind of putting the screws to the good guys and maybe cheering for the bad guys. But, interesting choice there, Arman. I'll let you run with it. Going back to the action in the ring, though, Zapata and Lothario continued to try and outdo one another in the ring. Gene Goodson again spoke about Kabuki during this one, so kind of took some of the shine off of whatever was going on in the ring. A lot of promotion for Kabuki the last couple episodes. Rightfully so. He's the main bad guy of this television. There's no question about it. Besides that, nothing really went on in the ring for the most of this one. Jose Lothario landed a few good punches. Zapata dropped from one of them, and Lothario picked up the 3 count. And again, that was on a punch. In my opinion, I'll tell you guys, for nothing really happening in the random standard turn knockout punch finish, I did consider this one a dud, so I'd say half a star. All right, so we're dipping. We've dipped a little bit. Carlos Zapata is not a guy that'll be heavily featured throughout the year. Kind of an enhancement guy. Same goes for a guy like Richard Blood, who Wild Bill faced in the first matchup here tonight. Anytime names like these pop up, you can kind of expect that 1 star, half a star territory, because they're not here to put on 5-star matches. They're here to help get guys over and get them wins. By any means necessary, apparently here with a punch that turned into a knockout punch. So that is your second match of the evening. Heading into your third match of the evening. It's a championship match. Look out. We got Madril versus Bugsy McGraw for the American Heavyweight Championship. Now, before I go into my match review, I want to talk a little bit about this Madril character, Alberto Madril, as he's also known. Madril, for my money, is a guy that you can really count on in world class. He's famously a good guy. He's right up there in popularity as far as I'm concerned with the Von Erichs, which is a huge compliment. And when you come to unsung heroes of world class, Madril is one of those guys. Madril is a name you would not know unless you've watched world class. I think he did a cup of coffee in maybe Seattle, Oregon, kind of up there, the Pacific. Nothing as of note, though, and that was later in his career after world class. So for my money, again, Madril, complete star on the roster, an integral part of especially 1982. Really enjoy him. Every time he's out there, he works well. He gives 100%, you can tell. And the fans absolutely love him, and I'm one of them. And it's a shame that Madril has kind of stepped away from pro wrestling. Again, hearsay and the research I've done on the internet tells me that he doesn't have much to do with wrestling these days. He is up there in age. And it's last reported that he was working security for a hospital in California somewhere. Is that true? I don't know. Is it made up? Could be. But it's a shame that he's not making the rounds on these wrestling, fan fests and what have you, because he's a guy that deserves to be paid to write a signature on an 8x10 photograph. I mean, he's really good. I really enjoy him. And hopefully through this series, you'll kind of discover Madril and you'll end up enjoying him as well. So there you go. Those are some roses and flowers for the much-deserved Madril. Let's get into this championship match, though, shall we? Madril and McGraw here were ready to go for their singles match with a 30-minute time limit. So they're getting some time here tonight. Madril was noted as being the current Texas heavyweight champion, taking on the American heavyweight champion for his title here. So we got a champion versus champion. Third match of the card. Things stayed pretty even as we got underway here. Several arm locks were seen. Madril stayed ahead with a quicker pace and outsmarted his opponent. Madril got the crowd behind him as they circled around the ring and went into a few basic holds and breaks. So they're kind of trading off moves here. We got a lot of stalling here at one point, and we were seeing kind of like a makeshift boxing match. And that's kind of part of Madril's style. He's apparently a former, Golden Gloves boxer or something along those lines in Texas. So his matches do tend to kind of have those stalemates where, you know what, damn it, Madril's going to box you if you ain't going to wrestle him. Bugsy jumped to the floor to break up some of the closed fists. The action spilled to the floor with McGraw bouncing Madril's head off the ring steps. Madril got his comeback in the ring with the crowd really into it, finishing up his rally with a near fall. Madril's figure 4 leg lock was then slapped on, and McGraw was able to make it to the ropes. Madril kept the hold on, though, and it was through the 5 count from the referee. So, Bugsy McGraw keeps the championship here via disqualification. After the match, Madril challenged the champ to a no disqualification match next time they meet. So, this one unfortunately ends in a DQ. My opinion, not horrible, but not great. I would say it was like a kind of a star and a half if I had to, because it did have a big match feel and the crowd was really into it. So Finish, obviously a bummer. Anytime you go into a DQ finish or a non-finish, a no contest, a time limit, to me it always kind of takes something away, especially with somebody being live there invested in a match, crowd's hot, and then you don't give them a finish. Kind of sucks. But they painted themselves in a corner. Obviously, they don't probably want Al Madril working as dual champion. So, what are you going to do? I guess, right? Who knows? There you go. So, championship match. Champion keeps his championship. Going into Larry Higgins versus Kerry Von Erich. Larry Higgins, I believe, maybe on 2 episodes in all of 1982 for World Class Championship Wrestling. So maybe that's too big a hint to give you before this match. But I'm not expecting, Wrestle Kingdom 9 in the Tokyo Dome. Take that for what you will. Kerry and Higgins were set for a singles match here, looking at a 15-minute time limit. Higgins went to jump Kerry prior to the bell, but Kerry was ready for him with a drop kick. Kerry locked in a stomach claw very quickly, picked Higgins up with one hand, and slammed him down. Kerry got a 3 count without even taking his ring jacket off. Higgins was pissed, of course, and that's how the match ends. For a squash, this made Kerry look like a blue chip killer in under a minute. Half a star for this one here, though, because I can't warrant giving this a full star rating when it was barely even a match. Again, Kerry still had his entrance gear on. But, hey, I mean, compared to what we've seen with Kerry in the ring and on the microphone, this is a step in the right direction, right? We want to see Kerry beat guys up on his way to bigger and better matches. So, if we have to take this as a stepping stone for greater things, I'm all for it, right? Because we love Kerry Von Erich here on World Class Retrospective. Don't get it twisted. I might make fun of him on the microphone. He might make fun of himself on the microphone. But as far as being a fan, this guy right here. So we'll move on to our main event without saying too much more. It was, again, Big Daddy Bundy versus El Negro Assassin and Tony Torres. Handicap action here. It was scheduled for 10 minutes to a limit. And Bundy got another good reaction here. He and Assassin started things off. Bundy dropped him with several shoulder blocks. Torres then came in to get dropped with a couple and a 2 count. Before the two heels bailed to the floor to come up with a new strategy because the one they were working was not working. Torres tagged in and didn't accomplish much against Bundy, so Assassin came in to work a double back elbow in on Bundy. They attempted it again, but Big Daddy Bundy forced them to collide into one another, and the match closed out with a big standing body splash on Tony Torres, awarding Bundy the win. My opinion on it, my take, Bundy was selling for a few things he probably shouldn't have here, which took away from this squash, I would say. Half a star for this handicap match here, and that is our main event, half a star. I feel like sometimes they're doing Bundy no favors when it comes to his presentation on TV. Yes, he's supposed to be this big, lovable guy who trained with the Von Erichs and trained under Fritz, and that part does, I think, work. I think the part that doesn't work is it's 1982. He's bigger than almost all of his opponents. He's beating 2 guys at once. And he's supposed to be a good guy. Typically, all the things I just mentioned are what bad guys do. So I do think that there's a disconnect here with Bundy. On one hand, he's over. I mean, the crowd does like him, but again, the Von Erichs have vouched for him. Jose Lothario has vouched for him. Several guys have kind of credited him as being the next big star in world class, perhaps. Somebody to maybe rival a guy like Kabuki, even. To me, there's just the puzzle pieces aren't quite matching up for that to be the bigger picture. I would say that this will be short-lived for Bundy. I do think things kind of take a turn for Bundy, and I'm not going to spoil too much, but I think they learn relatively quickly where he needs to be on the card and what he needs to be doing and who he needs to be squaring off with. Because to me, it's there, but not all the way there. So let's go back here and take a look at where we rated everything, just as a recap and wrap up. Match 1, Wild Bill Irwin versus Richard Blood. I gave that a full star. Carlos Zapata versus Jose Lothario. That was half a star, a dud, as far as I was concerned. Bugsy McGraw versus Al Madril. That was a star and a half. Best match on the card, I'd say. Not by much, but still worth noting. Kerry Von Erich versus Larry Higgins. Half a star. Big Daddy Bundy versus El Negro Assassin. And Tony Torres. Half a star. Ugh. Right. Another one in the books here, though, for World Class Championship Wrestling, despite there being missing weeks of television, as I mentioned. Other than that, where do I even start with this card? I didn't see much in the special category in any sense. We barely got any interviews. The matches were thumbs down. Again, I have my soft spots, though, right? Wild Bill Irwin's on the card. You know, a guy like Carlos Zapata, again, who isn't featured a lot, but you got to love those old school heels. Guys like Zapata who help get guys over. Guys like Wild Bill who will fight to a draw and fight guys week on end and just be that guy you love to hate. To be honest, though, the matches here obviously were pretty lackluster. And we heard more about next week, way more than we were able to enjoy this episode, in my opinion, as it unfolded. I look forward, speaking of next week, to see Kabuki. Though, for this episode, we didn't get any Kabuki. And to me, you definitely felt the lack of great Kabuki, the mystique of Kabuki. The hole left by great Kabuki on this episode, to me, was pretty apparent. Because I think he's probably one of the most talented guys that World Class has at this time. So anytime he's not featured on TV, and who knows? Maybe he was on 3 episodes from Fort Worth that we didn't get to see, right? Before this episode. The middle and later part of January 1982. There's a very good possibility of that, and maybe this week was just kind of his rest week. Who knows? There's no telling. Nonetheless, like I said, I am looking forward to next week. Kabuki returns. It's only up from here, right? Episode 3 in the books. Rough week of television for World Class. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We play it straight here on the podcast, right? Kind of dud action. One interview that wasn't anything to write home about. Sorry, Kerry and Kevin. So we'll roll right into next week. We got our smiles on. Our game faces are on. We're back in the Sportatorium. Fries cooked in rat grease and all. What more could you want? Was this week great? No. Will next week be great? You better believe it. I'll be there. I'm hoping you'll join me. I'll even, if I have to, buy your ticket, okay? If I have to. So, without further ado, guys, thanks for joining me. Follow us on X. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us via snail mail. Subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already. We got plenty more to see.